They find a room filled with chanting practitioners. The suspect is pinned to the floor, thrashing and screaming as the priestess performs a final ritual. The man undergoes a violent physical convulsion and suddenly goes limp. He opens his eyes and looks around the room with total confusion. The frenzy ends, leaving the detectives to arrest a man who claims to have no memory of the killings. Detective Danny Reagan bursts into the emergency room with one objective. He needs a name. A drug dealer named Dean lies on a gurney, bleeding out. He don't need link to a killer who is still on the loose. Linda Reagan, the head nurse and Danny's wife, blocks his path. She cites hospital policy and medical ethics. To her, a patient's life is a priority that supersedes any police investigation. She refuses to let Danny question the man in critical condition. Because of her interference, the lead goes cold. The witness dies on the operating table, and the killer remains free. The conflict follows them home to the family dinner table. The silence is heavy. Danny blames Linda for the dead end in this case, while Linda stands by her professional oath. She tells him that in her ward, saving a life, even a murderer's, comes first. The argument turns sharp when Linda accuses Danny of believing his work is more important than hers. She refuses to let his badge dictate her medical decisions. The tension breaks the family peace, and Linda walks out of the house. Danny spends the night on the sofa, forced to face the reality of their conflicting duties. He realizes that both of them are bound by different, equally rigid sets of rules. Later, they meet at a racetrack. There are no dramatic speeches. They acknowledge the brutal friction between a detective's pursuit of justice and a nurse's commitment to care. They reconcile, accepting that their marriage will always exist in the crossfire of their careers. The New York City mayor stands before a restless crowd at the Bitterman Housing Project. He is there to address the surge in local violence. Without warning, a gunman fires. The mayor is hit and falls, paralyzed on the stage. Security forces swarm the area as the crowd scatters in panic. The police arrest Hector, a teenager with significant intellectual disabilities. In the interrogation room, detectives face a complete deadlock. Hector is nonverbal and unresponsive to standard questioning. Jamie Reagan, a patrol officer, intervenes with a specific observation. He informs the detectives that Hector relies on specific radio frequencies to regulate his emotions. Jamie suggests using a radio as a psychological bridge. The detectives bring a small device into the room and tune it to a news station. The rhythmic broadcast immediately alters Hector's behavior. His agitation fades and his focus sharpens. Under the drone of the radio, Hector begins to describe the events. He reveals that a man named Orlando gave him the weapon. Orlando told him the gun was a toy and that the shooting was a game, similar to a video game. Hector provides a detailed physical description: Orlando's tattoos, his gold watch, and his red sneakers. The interrogation breaks the silence. A rookie's attention to detail exposes a gang conspiracy that used a vulnerable boy as a political assassin. The investigation now has a name and a direct lead. Detective Danny Reagan spots the gunman, Curtis, in a crowded subway station. He does not wait for a tactical opening. He charges through the commuters, slams Curtis against a metal gate, and pins him to the ground with a knee to the neck. The arrest is swift and violent. The trail leads the police to 156 Bolton Avenue. Danny's team breaches the apartment, forcing the primary target, Mario Hunt, to flee toward the roof. On the rooftop, Mario attempts a desperate jump to a neighboring building. He misses the landing. He barely catches a rusted metal ladder, leaving his body dangling 15 stories above the concrete. Danny reaches the ledge and looks down at the man responsible for the hit on his wife. Mario screams for help, his grip failing against the cold brick. Danny does not pull him up. Instead, he grabs Mario's wrist and holds him suspended over the abyss. Danny uses the height as a physical interrogator. He stares at Mario, refusing to move as the killer's fingers slip. The imminent threat of the fall overrides Mario's silence. Terrified and exhausted, Mario breaks. He confesses to the murders of Chief Kent and his wife while staring into the drop. Danny waits until the admission is witnessed by the arriving backup before hauling Mario back onto the roof. Mario is slammed onto the gravel and placed in steel cuffs. The confession is secured and the killer is neutralized.
Officer Kara Walsh returns to the 12th precinct. Her colleagues refuse to speak to her or acknowledge her presence. She reported her partner for an unjustified fatal shooting, and the squad has declared her an outcast. Jamie Reagan ignores the unspoken boycott. He requests to ride as her partner, despite warnings from other officers that his career will suffer for it. They respond to a robbery at a pharmacy. The suspects are armed with heavy rifles. As bullets shred the the store, Jamie and Walsh are pinned in the back aisles. Jamie calls a 10-13 over the radio. It is the highest emergency signal for an officer in immediate danger. Nearby units hear the call but do not engage their sirens. They wait blocks away, allowing the gunman to fire at will. They later claim engine failure to explain their delay. Walsh is hit in the shoulder, but she continues to return fire. When Eddie Janko arrives as the only immediate backup, Walsh moves into the line of fire to protect her. She neutralizes the suspects and secures the scene. The officers who delayed their arrival find Walsh bleeding but standing. Back at the station, Jamie confronts Officer Reynolds. He dismisses the excuse of a flooded engine. Jamie states the facts in front of the entire squad. Walsh took a bullet for a fellow officer while the rest of the precinct sat in their cars. He tells Reynolds that Walsh is twice the cop he will ever be. He makes it clear that any further harassment of Walsh is a direct challenge to him. The precinct goes silent.
Detective Scanlon accidentally discharges his service weapon inside a restaurant, wounding his partner in the leg. The shooting is initially dismissed as a freak accident. Scanlon meets Commissioner Frank Reagan in private, leaning on their decades of shared history to avoid a formal inquiry. He reminds Frank of his medals and his upcoming retirement. Frank ignores the sentiment and follows the evidence. A mandatory toxicology report shows that the wounded partner was legally intoxicated at the time of the shooting. Since the two were dining together, the conclusion is unavoidable. Furthermore, the required breathalyzer test for Scanlon was never performed, a clear violation of department regulations intended to protect a veteran. Frank meets Scanlon at a quiet pier for a final confrontation. Scanlon stops the excuses. He confesses to a 2-year drinking habit, driven by a paralyzing fear of life. After the police department, he admits the job is the only thing he has left. Frank offers no leniency. He demands the badge immediately. Scanlon understands the ultimatum. He pulls the gold shield from his pocket and places it in Frank's palm. Frank accepts the resignation, choosing a technical retirement to save Scanlon's pension while ending his career in disgrace. The exchange is silent and final. Scanlon walks away, stripped of his authority and his identity. Frank watches him go, holding the badge of a man who chose the bottle over the oath. A gang leader coordinates an assassination from inside his prison cell. He targets Hector, a key witness currently recovering in a hospital ward. Curtis, a teenager and former hospital employee, is forced to carry out the hit. He enters the room under the guise of a worker. He draws a handgun and points it directly at Hector. Linda Reagan, the attending nurse, stands in the line of fire. She does not retreat. Curtis orders her to leave the room immediately. He is sweating and his hands tremble, but the weapon remains leveled at her. Linda refuses. She states that Hector is her patient and she is responsible for his life. She moves her body directly